Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of the Fervent for the show where we help you grow your business to infinity and beyond. I don't know that I'm allowed to say that, but well, I just did. Today we are joined with Tim Ryan, my co-host at Ryan TNT. What does the TNT stand for, Tim? I think people have been wondering. Are you like a Tim?
It's a long story. Because so back in the day when the internet was first starting, like a username, it used to be Ryan T, and then that became more difficult to get. So then that turned into Ryan TNT. So it's Ryan, Tim, and Terry, my wife, stemming back from the early days.
What's her handle?
Sometimes she'll do TNT too. I don't know. It all depends.
Well, there you go. And we also have special guest, the man behind Cure, Chris Shelton. He doesn't go by Christopher. I probably hate that. I hate my first name. You probably hate your full name. So when someone calls you your full name, do you get mad?
No, it's just more formal. I can appreciate it. I usually write it out like in the signature. I use Christopher instead of Chris because it sounds, I don't know, a little more formal, but nowadays I'm just going with Chris because it's shorter and simpler, and I'm getting too old to write out another 5 letters.
Well, you should know that anytime you're around me, it's as informal as possible.
Yeah, well, I know Zack. But, it used to be very difficult to fill out Scantrons because they never had enough blocks for my full name.
That's what. So a lot of people know you from StartWheel. A lot of people know you from ODU. A lot of people know you from Cure. A lot of people know you from maybe something else, the guy riding his bike that's electric around town. Yeah. But when you introduce yourself to someone, how do you normally do it? For someone that has so many different personas, if you will, how do you introduce yourself?
Oh, man, that's a great interview question because I have no idea. It changes based on the year, I guess, and whatever antics I might be up to. But nowadays, I say that I'm a restaurant owner during a pandemic and spend a lot of my time renovating a house that we bought last year, and that kind of wraps it up. It's I haven't had to do this a lot during the pandemic because there's no networking events to go to. So I haven't brushed up on my introduction skills lately. Thanks for putting me on the spot.
So one of the deals
interviewers in the world ask I find that the worst interviewer in the world or people who interview poorly are ones who are like, so tell me a little bit about yourself. And so I hinted at that and then made you kind of say, okay, how would you introduce yourself from that? But yeah, I mean, sorry.
Right. No, it's totally fine. I'll get back to you on it.
Okay. Stay tuned, everyone.
I'll polish up my resume.
Chris Shelton, unknown, parts unknown.
Serial dabbler.
Serial eater.
Yeah.
Serial killer.
No, serial, Cereal.
We'll leave that for the Netflix documentaries, Tim.
So what's been happening the last year?
Another question. Keep them coming.
What's been happening, Chris? You so during our transition about a little over a year ago, you wanted to focus some more time on Cure and to get the business up and running, not up and running, but strengthen where everything was going.
Sure.
So I'm sure that you probably are thankful that you did that, not realizing what was about to happen in March.
Well, it's a double-edged sword. The intent when I departed StartWheel was, well, look, we've had this business now for going on 10 years, and it's about time we try to quit our day job and, take it full time. I can't say that it was profitable enough at the time, and certainly not now, to support 2 families, my business partner and myself. But without putting a full-time effort towards it, at least from one of us, we would probably never get there. So I had to hand over the reins of StartWheel to focus on Cure, and the expectation was with that full-time effort, by this time today, certainly we would be profitable enough to support at least, one person's income needs. And then the pandemic had other thoughts on that matter. So it's been kind of a roller coaster since March. Also, at the same time I was leaving StartWheel, my girlfriend and I bought a house over here in beautiful Portsmouth, right across the street from the houses on the water on the western branch of the Elizabeth River. If you're ever going across the West Norfolk Bridge, you can see our place. But it was in...
We can wave.
Yeah, do that. I'll wave back. But it was kind of in, rougher shape. It's a 1949 vintage house that hadn't been updated, at least since the late 80s, early 90s, I would say. It had for example, a covered porch with a rotten roof that I had to rectify, and took the opportunity to add a deck on top, which is great because we can see the water across the one-level houses across the street. So turn it into a water view. We had 14 pine trees, like 70, 80-foot tall pine trees that came down, and then that contractor left us high and dry and didn't come back to clean up the mess. So we had a pile of logs, 10 foot high and 10 foot long. And then COVID hit. So somebody loaned me their Bobcat, their skid steer. And I went ahead and cleared the yard and graded it myself. And
so we need to add home renovator to the list of things.
Yeah, I would say home renovator, maybe home builder, even some of the projects that I've, flipped a bathroom, 3 bedrooms, a living room, dining room, a whiskey room, as we call it. It's got wood paneling and kind of a unique architecture. Re-roofed that covered porch, put a deck on top, brought 4 koi ponds back to life. Lot clearing and grading. I have picked up and relayed about 1,400 square foot of brick paver patio and walkway, because they were originally laid on just bare earth, and so they were all jagged to the extent that the inspector noted it as a trip hazard and something to be rectified. So I went ahead and picked up each brick one by one, dusted them off, dug out the base, laid a proper base, relayed all the bricks. I think I counted something in the neighborhood of 2,000 bricks. Mm-hmm. So I've been busy with this, and I would say to put a number on it, I've probably built $100,000 worth of equity, above the price that we paid for the home.
How did you, is that something that you've been good at your entire life, or is it something that you learned along the way? Not necessarily each piece, but
a mix of that and YouTube videos.
Yeah.
YouTube. For example, my dad was always building something. Our house growing up was, some kind of construction zone for most of my childhood. He had taken this double wide prefab modular home and put a second story and a front porch and a side porch, and built a 2-story garage. And so he came, a story I like to tell is he came home one time from work, and my brother and I were I want to say 4 and 6, and he had the scaffold set up as he was building this 2-story garage, and my brother and I were on the roof, just being 4-year-old monkeys. And, that freaked him out. But I'm not shy of a job site and some physical labor. And with the restaurants, all the build out for Norfolk, we opened the doors having spent $35,000, which is extremely low for a restaurant build out.
Did it have a hood already?
I'm sorry?
Did it have a hood?
No, we still don't have a hood there.
Okay. You just don't do that kind of meal prep, I guess.
Right. We developed the menu around not having a hood because hoods are extremely expensive and ongoing cost of cleaning it. And also, generally, if you're if you need a hood, then you're doing less healthy food, like fried food, for example. Though it'd be great to be able to do a burger in there.
Wait a second. Fried food is not healthy?
I mean, it's good, but I don't know if it's as good for you. I eat it all the time. I mean,
there you go.
I can't do without fried chicken. So,
ladies and gentlemen, Bob Vila.
Yeah, hey, I've been watching some Bob Vila on WHRO Create. Shout out to that channel. Excellent broadcast.
YouTube University is such an interesting thing. So my wife and I recently got a new puppy, maybe like 2 months ago, a month and a half ago, something like that. And YouTube was not around when I had a puppy last time. And so it's really interesting just to think about how I trained that dog and now how I'm training this dog. And so a lot of it is through YouTube and watching a ton of content around like, hey, here are the things to do. And so same thing, like I've had to puppy proof a lot of things. And so like some of the stuff in there is construction things where like I had to, he started eating like the AC unit or like pieces of the AC unit outside. So I had to build like this fence around it. And so like I looked at different things and YouTube helped me figure out, okay, this type of fence will probably help you with this. And it's like, okay, yeah, it's helpful.
Yeah.
Tim?
No, I think that to your point, YouTube, I believe, is the second largest search platform, only second to Google.
What is it called?
YouTube. Heard of it?
Oh, YouTube.
I've heard of it.
Yeah. I wasn't actually, I thought you said something else there.
No. But no, so where are you at, Chris? I don't, if we're jumping around, my apologies due to my internet connection, but so where are you at in terms of, I think one of the biggest pain points that people have had in terms of, especially the restaurant food service space, is keeping employees engaged, keeping employees not knowing when you can open, when you have to shut down. Where are you at in terms of retention? What are some of the things that you've done to keep your team together? I mean, that's a huge part of being successful in business.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I think those efforts began long, long ago. I mean, we've always been able to keep just a great team with a great work atmosphere and this sort of family-like culture. And, every couple of years we'll probably turn over almost the entire staff, but, that's the nature of the restaurant industry. But all along the way, we empower them to make decisions, whether good or bad, and, don't accost them for mistakes. Even if, we as the owners may have seen the mistake coming, let them make a mistake. And Tim, you're a parent, so you probably practice that with your children from time to time. Let them fall down and pick themselves back up and learn from it. Let them make some product decisions. And, for example, we, have somebody who orders the beer and, whichever one they think is going to be a good seller this week or this month, go for it. We try not to micromanage, actually, far from it, especially with both my business partner and I having day jobs for most of the business's existence. We've had little choice than to, leave the managers alone for the most part and let them make business decisions. We make the high-level business decisions still, but, for example, the day-to-day communication with all of the other staff, like we're not dealing with that. That's our general manager and other managers.
Hold on. So I want to touch on that. So I think a lot of people say that, right? A lot of people talk about that's a great leadership thing. Like leaders let people, when they fall, they walk back up and things like that. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people say that and then don't do it. And a lot of people hear it and like, yeah, but that'll never work. And so there are people like you who say it and do it. And then there's everyone else, I think, right? So if someone was listening and is interested in doing that, like you're the boss, you pay the bills, you do all these things. Like it doesn't seem, it makes sense to three of us. And I think it makes sense to several other people, but I don't think it always gels with everyone. If someone was listening and is like, I just don't get it. How are you going to tell me that empowering this person is going to make my company run more efficiently and yada, 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 when it seems like everything else I've grown up watching and listening was the complete opposite of that.
Right.
What do you say to that?
Yeah, it's certainly a matter of leadership style. And I think the old style of, more of a dictatorship is no longer in vogue, and certainly not what the younger generations want to be a part of on a day-to-day basis and throughout the rest of their careers. It's not easy to do it because, again, you see them making a mistake, is a mistake, and your tendency is to be like, don't do that. But then they'll never learn. You've got to take a lot of deep breaths along the way.
As you do this,
I'm trying to articulate an answer here that can truly be helpful. And
so maybe walk through an example, right? So you see someone messing up, and you don't stop them mid thing. You don't yell at them. You don't get angry at them, right? So walk through what you would do in that situation, because I think most people would stop them and say, no, this is not the way I taught you. This is not the way that our protocol is. This is not a procedure.
Yeah.
Yada, yada,
I think it's about the approach, especially if you're in front of customers or other employees, perhaps that's especially not an appropriate time to reprimand or have that discussion. Wait for the appropriate time. Make sure that you have some compliments to bring along to the discussion. What do they call that? A poop sandwich. have criticisms on either side or compliments on either side of criticisms.
Not familiar with that term, but hey, I guess it makes sense.
Well, it's a slightly different term with a different 4-letter word. In any case, make sure you're bringing as much positivity to that conversation as you can, because otherwise, if it's just strictly, reprimand or negativity, then that's going to probably fall on deaf ears. Achieving this sense of family among the staff, I think just encourage, it's really hard to put your finger on how we have gotten to this point where the staff feels so passionate about this business, almost that it is their second home or their immediate family. And I'll give you an example of that. When COVID started, shit was hitting the fan. It was very difficult to know what to do. And our staff, were making the changes necessary to go curbside pickup, to do online ordering, to move the furniture around for all the social distancing. But in addition to that, they felt compelled to paint the entire facility, our Norfolk location. And we told them that would be a task that is probably beyond, what they can imagine it is, because it's a rather large facility, if you're going to paint it at least. But they made an agreement that they would, we didn't have money to pay for that kind of labor in the beginning of the pandemic, especially. So they volunteered their hours to paint probably 5,000 square foot worth of surface on their own accord. They brought this idea to us. Hey, while we're shut, or, while we can't have people in here because of the social distancing rules, why don't we paint the place? And Mike and I were like, well, that sounds great, but we don't have the funds to do that. So they made an agreement that they would volunteer their hours. They would volunteer to paint the place if we just bought the paint and equipment. And that's what happened. And I think that's testament to how our staff, sees one another and sees the business and the customers.
What's been the biggest surprise in terms of things that you've tried? What's been the most successful thing that you've tried, or what was something that you tried to do that fell flat, that caught you by surprise?
During the pandemic or before?
Yeah.
Well, the first thing my mind goes to, and I don't know if this quite answers the question, but we had launched a mobile coffee and espresso service late last year. And so we have this coffee cart that I built with my own hands. Actually, we have two of them. And they're small enough in a Kia Forte. And so the idea is we're contracted, for weddings or corporate gatherings or what have you, when we bring this coffee setup and we added a mobile espresso machine, which is somewhat difficult to do and somewhat expensive as well. So we were gaining traction with that, really good traction through the beginning of the year. And then the pandemic happened and we had to completely shut that down because, of course, nobody is doing weddings and nobody is doing corporate gatherings or any gatherings of the sort that you would, want to shell out $1,000 to have a mobile coffee bar at your event. And so that really fell flat really quickly. It is picking back up a little bit now, but, we're having the second wave of COVID and who knows where that's going to go. Did that answer your question in any regard?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just like right now, it's just it's the wild, wild west out there, and unless you're trying to innovate and try new things, you're gonna fail. So it's like, I'm just curious.
One thing I'll add is we put up a baby monitor. Like, this is when you couldn't have any customers in your establishment. So probably up until June, when we hit phase 2, we had a baby monitor that we just stuck on beside the door on the outside, and the other end of it, the receiver was at the cash register. Because it was, the thing with COVID and restaurants especially, and I suppose retail in general, is not only did it hit your revenue side, but it hit your expense side really hard too, because now you have to have an extra person basically to run between the cash register and the door to take people's orders, an extra person to make sure we're maintaining cleanliness and wiping things down, etc. And then all the PPE that we had to add to our cost structure, and all of those things just compounded. At the exact same time, you're forced to, crush the revenue side of the business by governmental orders, which is what it is. But, we took a double whammy. But the baby monitor saved us a little bit by implementing that.
So I've always thought that entrepreneurs, the actual employers, have it harder than the employees, right? Yes, it's a bigger risk reward type of scenario, but I think a lot of the things are set up for them to fail, right? And whether or not people agree with that, whatever. Obviously, everyone on this chat owns a business and is probably going to believe that kind of mindset. But then when they start mandating certain things like they've done here, and a lot of these individuals are not in the business world to understand, like, a lot of people talk about restaurants having a very fine margin anyway. Then you implement this new thing in there, which could be a plethora of different things, right? You just named 3 or 4 right there. And that swings your +4 to -3. Let's just, I don't know, those are the numbers. I'm just guessing, right? And so it's a 7-point swing. And it's like, what do I do? And so, like, when you're being over governed and things like that, how do you as an individual who runs probably the hardest establishment to already run, then get over governmentized, if that's a word, in that, and mandated to do these certain things? Like, how do you emotionally, physically, mentally, everything handle that kind of, I'm just going to call it an experience?
Yeah. Well, you borrow a skid steer and you clear and grade your lot, and you resurrect koi ponds in your backyard. That's
nothing to do with the actual business. Hey,
that's what I resorted to when I wasn't worried, I was worried about the business while I was moving rocks and boulders around for this pond, and while I was, picking up 1,000-pound bucket loads of dirt and debris with the skid steer. it wasn't a whole lot you could do, but stand by while, the world around you. And I understand this is what many, many people around the globe, have felt this way. The world is crumbling around you and you can't do a damn thing about it. And so I tried not to worry about the things that we couldn't control, like, having to close to customers on the, inside of the store. Those things, like, we were mandated by the government and we are darn well going to follow the guideline. The worst case scenario is you don't follow the guidelines. Somebody gets COVID, from or within your business, and the press from that ain't going to be good.
Mm-hmm.
So, if
there's pretty hefty fines in there, hundreds of thousands of dollars, if I remember.
And Karens are out there. I will tell you that. I mean, there was
Kevin exists too.
Karen and Kevin, yeah. But throughout the summer, it's died off now. But throughout the summer, we were getting emails from worried customers on a weekly basis because an employee, and I know 100% our employees are following the guidelines better than probably 99% of any establishment you go into today. Right. Because, again, they care about themselves and the business and the customers that much. But if they so much as pulled the mask down for a quick breath, right, we would get an email about it.
Well, I think you even see people like posting pictures online from events from before, and people are like, I cannot believe you're hosting an event like this. It's like,
yeah.
Wow.
Did you think that maybe like they're posting this in April and they're in tank tops, and maybe this is like a before picture? Like, I don't know. Like it
was nuts. But back to the the point. How do we deal with that? We immediately, from my economist training, I figured that the crushing blow to the economy that this would have in general would absolutely force the government to step in and do some sort of helicopter drop of cash, especially to the hardest hit sectors like the restaurant industry and airlines, for example. And so I was pretty sure on that, a week or so into the pandemic. And so I was just holding my breath and waiting for them to come out with what became the CARES Act and the PPP funding. And so I was made sure we were first in line to apply for the PPP funding. And therefore we were one of the first to get that funding. And I've talked to a lot of business owners who chose not to apply for any of that funding because they were worried about the down the road ramifications, like, is this going to riddle us with debt? And again, I went back and thought through the economics of it. Well, the government will probably not make it stick as debt because that would further cripple the economy. We got like $90,000 from the PPP, and that is more money than we've ever had in our bank account for the business. And we knew that if that was $90,000 in debt, that we probably would not be able to service it and would therefore become insolvent and go out of business.
Well, it was set to do like 2.5 times a certain amount of expenses, which 75% at the front of it was supposed to be towards. I mean, it's payrolls in the name, right? So,
right. So they had originally they had the 8-week window, and that worried us and a lot of other small businesses because
it seems like so long ago. I mean, that was so long ago that we were talking about these things. I mean,
if they're crippling our ability to serve customers, we don't have the need for the labor. And if you're going to pay people for not being there, then how are the people who are there going to feel, who are working for their paycheck? And then half your employees aren't working for a paycheck. So we just couldn't stomach at least for our business, and some businesses maybe that would make a lot of sense to pay people to stay home, but we just couldn't, and didn't want to blow through this PPP money because we had no idea what the summer was going to bring. And ultimately, we've shut the stores down on 2 occasions due to what was thought of as a close contact. The first time ended up being bronchitis, and the second time was nothing at all.
Well,
but for an abundance of caution, we went ahead and
now we're going into the now normal sniffle season.
Right, and that's going to be so I guess we're bouncing around subjects here, but we've implemented some protocols. Like we used to share staff between locations, and we're not doing that for now, which obviously causes some headache with staffing for either of the shops. But in the event that there's a close contact, we don't have to shut down both shops because there was cross-contamination between the employees of the stores. And little things like that, like my business response to the COVID is, I would say, different than my personal thoughts on the matter. I don't know. I kind of feel like we're just as a society sort of creating our own nightmare in a sense, and maybe going a bit overboard. But that's me personally. I know that for the business's sake, like the best thing to do, the best thing for our employees is to respect all of these guidelines.
I mean, I've said I think that this can be a very serious thing and overblown at the same time. Right?
Yeah,
I think
we don't know which. And it's like if you were to invent the perfect, cooties,
right.
Like COVID would be it, because you can't see.
When people get in political, so-and-so did this and so did that. It's like, well, you don't know that. I mean, you don't know that a certain count will be higher or lower. Like there's no basis to that. The basis is you don't like this person or you like this person. It's like would an economist come up with those numbers? My guess is no, because there's no data to track it. Like you don't know that answer. And so I think we're in similar agreements there. But something that's interesting that I think Tim would appreciate too, that you started with, is when things hit the fan, you did other things other than the business. And I think that mental sanity is something that more people need to implement. Like, I worked out every day during all this. Sometimes it was a run. Sometimes it was a bike. It was supposed to be a swim sometimes, but the pool closed, so I couldn't go to the swim. Tim's on, running 10,000, 15,000 days straight, something like that. So, I mean, doing things other than the business, getting out of the business, I think is powerful. And I think it seems like that other things keep.
And we were lucky to, be in a position at that time to do that, because we had all, we were already sort of more of a passive sort of, management from the ownership, because we have always carried day jobs in one shape or form. And so, we were already in a position where the staff were more or less taking care of day-to-day operations. And when COVID hit, we had to make changes, and they were in the position. What I'm trying to say is, I think they were able to take their minds off it by, putting their brain power toward how do we make adjustments with the business, even though, obviously in that case they are thinking about the business, but it gave them something to chew on and something to experiment with. And I think especially initially for them, it was probably a nice breath of fresh air not to have customers in the store and constantly, having to put on that customer service smile, which you have to do, especially when customers are in the store. But as time wore on, it was really eerie not to have customers in the store. I remember the first time I went in there after the whole shutdown started, and this was probably like 2 weeks in, that I went in there, and it was just, it was sad. It was sad not to see, it bustling with customers and conversation and cheer and all that. But, hey, we're here now. We made it through so far. He was about to ask, perchance, because it sounded like a good one.
It sounded like a good one. Hold on. The internet, how dare that? What's interesting about that is a lot of people, when this whole thing happened, home internet is very different than business internet. And so I'm surprised that that conversation didn't come up more. It sounds like a lot more businesses are paying for home internet now, for some people, at least a percentage, but let's see.
Yeah. Ours is not one you can run from home in particular.
Right.
That is. One of the biggest challenges for me through this pandemic has been getting to learn Zoom and all this video conferencing stuff. Like, I know I'm supposed to be looking into the camera because that will make the best production.
Oh, come on.
Probably supposed to not be putting my hand in the camera like I've been doing.
Well, yeah, but you know what's interesting about that is like, then why did the platform, right? So we use a thing called StreamYard to record these, right? And what's interesting about that is it is set so that I am a little bit to the left, and then you are to the little right, and Tim is to the little down. So then sometimes when I'm thinking about it, I actually move the browser to the middle and more up so I can look at it. So I just moved it. And so it probably looks more like I'm looking at the camera now than before. And so it is interesting. Little tidbits like that. Are they the end of the world? I don't know. I mean,
yeah, well, you're in it for different reasons too, like more professional reasons, whereas the average office worker on a Zoom call isn't worried about the production quality.
Right. I mean, they're like, hello, it's okay.
But most of the time I've been using Zoom since the pandemic started was for things like this, doing an interview. And so there is production quality that I've tried to keep in mind. I apologize if I missed the mark on that for the Fervent 4 show.
Oh,
but
no,
I'm going to try the thing you just suggested. I can figure out how to resize my screen.
Tim, what was the question you were asking? So Chris is on the front line. You want to hear conversations, and then you went, yummy.
Yeah, no, Chris, you're on the front line, and you're the people that that people should be listening to. What letter grade would you give the government folks that are leading from the rear? What letter grade would you give them like we were back in school? And what would you have done differently to, or if you could be king for a day, what would you differently to help people help yourself out?
Well, I'm happy to not be in that position. I think it's fascinating how quickly they were able to put together the CARES Act and put out the PPP stuff. It's also fascinating how freaking long it took them to do that. But if you imagine trying to turn a ship as large as the Titanic away from an iceberg, sometimes you don't quite make it. And in this case, I think they did manage to miss that iceberg. And the PPP has certainly saved our business. If not for the PPP, we would have been insolvent within, weeks of the pandemic. Again, our revenue side was crushed. Our margins, our cost structure, increased dramatically over an extremely short period of time. We had, the staffing schedule laid out for 2 weeks, and we couldn't respond quick enough, while still respecting our employees, as individuals and as income earners. Like, we couldn't just flip the switch as quickly as we should have as far as cash flow goes. It was really quick. It was really quick to put us in the hole, like $50,000. And
because you were still paying,
we're still paying the staff, we tried to trim it down quickly, and but we couldn't do it quickly. It was just, it blew my mind how quickly.
1 week of payroll, depending on how big the business.
We're in the black, and then 3 weeks later, we're $50,000 in the hole operationally. Right. And, I wish I could say that I had that kind of money, just laying around under my pillow to shore it up. But even if I did, it would have been silly. And probably.
But remember, when this whole thing started, depending on who you were talking to, we were talking about weeks. This is going to be weeks. So, you're sitting there going, okay, well, no one, right? The oldest person I know is my wife's grandma. She's 90. She's never dealt with anything like this to the extreme like this. Mm-hmm. Some people talk about other things that happened in the 20s and the 30s, but most of those people are probably not alive to remember those things, or at least aren't a business owner. And so you're sitting there going, okay, well, this is going to be a couple weeks. Mm-hmm. And so that's why you probably didn't pull the trigger on some of those other things sooner. Because you have to think about the context behind it. The context said, hey, Tim and I were running a race March 1st. And then what 2 weeks later was when this whole thing went down. Mm-hmm. And it was it was kind of there, but it was it's not that serious. Is it serious? I understand why you wouldn't have pulled the trigger. Even a month into it, you still probably were I remember when people were like, they're going to close till June. I was like, no, they're not. Like, that's ridiculous. Like, they're not going to close our world for months. Who would do that? Who, like, they can't do that. That's literally what I was saying.
I can't wait for the movies to come out that are covering the topic of, COVID, especially early COVID adjustments, because, I wouldn't have fathomed if you'd have asked me. I'm sure you guys agree. If you were to list off the adjustments we've had to make in life, in business, etc., it would have been no. That's not going to happen. That's fiction.
Well, there was no precedent.
It's a dystopian fiction. Not going to happen.
Yeah, no precedent. The context is like so misleading in every way possible, right? Like, you don't know what's true and what's not. Even to this day, you still don't know what's true and what's not, right? I mean, apparently a vaccine is coming out, but like, how misleading is that information, right? And so, like, I'm not trying to like throw things all over the place, but like, you have to just do your own thing, I think, because you just don't know what's going to happen.
So Tim asked the question, and we completely diverted, and that was not intentional. What would I do? Because this is a fun question, and I want to try and answer it in some sort of real way. What would I do?
I mean, because I think that probably one of the most frustrating things on your part is just the fact that everybody is lumped together in the same industry. It's just like, it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. I mean, you're kind of forced to comply based on those measures. So I mean, I'm just curious what you as a business owner, what you could have done or would have suggested differently to
policy wise. I don't know if basing the PPP funding emergency funds basically off of payroll was necessarily the best way to go about it. But then, I think the best way to go about it would have been, let's measure the difference between where your revenues are, post-pandemic versus before. But you can't do that. You can only do that after the fact, right? And we needed this helicopter drop to happen yesterday, ASAP. It couldn't have happened fast enough. And, I don't know that I would have done much differently if I was in a policy maker's shoes to get the government to move that swiftly to throw a couple of $1 trillion, just drop it, drop a couple of $1 trillion. Yes, there's going to be fraud involved, but to not do it would be way more detrimental to the economy overall.
Yeah, I mean, but those are outliers, right? I mean, I feel like we live in like an outlier environment where people just talk about the outliers. It's like, okay, 99.9
media does. I mean, that's what sells, clicks. Right?
No comment. As a former journalist, no comment. But I mean, like, we are misled by big media, and then kind of double down by big tech on this, where it's like, here's a clickbait story. Nothing in it is factually incorrect, but you are misled, in my opinion, that thing is an everybody thing and not just a solo thing, right? And so it's like, business owner did this, and they're alluding, and a journalist would get really mad at me for saying this, but they're alluding to the fact that means every business owner does this. If fraud's going to be on one thing, then fraud's going to be everyone. And I think that's where it gets a little crazy. It's like, well, I mean, why do we have to think about those things if the overwhelming majority? It seems like it's a deterrent that deters all these other people that need this thing to stay afloat.
Right.
And instead, we worry about fraud on something that isn't going to be for the majority of people. And by the way, you guys, from a government perspective, are going to, it sounds like at some point, $150,000 or less that got PPP, it's just going to be saying, here it is. So,
yeah, and the thing is, like, the public's not hearing about that.
I wish that they would hurry up and come out with, the CARES Act too, because while we're not necessarily struggling as much as we have been, we've been successful in getting the PPP and several other grants, since all that started. But there's a ton who a ton of businesses who probably weren't eligible for some of these things. Like PPP was based off of payroll, and if payroll is simply not one of your biggest expense items, then you would have gotten
screwed.
Pretty low sum from the PPP.
Tim, if I can answer that question.
What was the question?
The one about like what would you do, like how would you grade it, things like that. Like I would just have similar to the way Norfolk did things. I would have just said here if your business makes $250,000, we're giving you 15% of the money or 50%, whatever it is, and we're just going to lump sum. Here's why: because the amount of paperwork and the pain that some of these businesses had to go through to end up spending money to then potentially get money, I think made it harder. And I think that's where we over governmentize things. And the things that I've heard over and over and over again from probably hundreds of businesses now is like, it's so difficult to get this thing that you have no idea where in the spectrum you're even going to get money in this, right? And so I'm applying to this thing and I'm thinking I'm getting $30,000 and I get 3. And I just spent, a week's worth of time trying to figure out how to do this. Does that make sense? And so I would have lumped it more and said, hey, you're in this. Now I get it. That screws people, right? Because there is a spectrum in there. But I would have just said, here's the money. You don't have to do anything else with it. Make sure they're a business. Make sure they're up to date and things like that. But here's a check and go. Similar to how the individuals who got the $1,200 stipend got it. It's just like, here you go. Right. And that's what I would have done from a business perspective because of all the pain in the tail that people had to go through to try and get some of this money. Right.
Zack for mayor. Zack for mayor. Let's do that. No, I agree. The
make it easier. Businesses are going to be your backbone and you want them to be so successful. Then
fraud happens and prosecute after the fact. But we needed this money quick and we wanted, it's best to have it no strings attached. Like, all the strings with some of these grants that we've applied for, there's one in particular where I just decided not to apply because they wanted all,
and then some of these, you got this grant, but you're in this city, you can't get this. Like, they made it too difficult. Like, do you want businesses to succeed or not? It's that simple. And it's like, my whole thing is like, if you're going to say what you say about businesses being the backbone, we're small business friendly, and Virginia is so gung-ho for business and all that stuff, then make it easy for them. If not, stop saying it. That's it. You don't have to say that you want this area to be a business-friendly area, but you do. So then make it super simple for these businesses to succeed when you're mandating these other things. That's it. Zack for Mayor 2024.
Let's do it.
All right. Chris, I'm curious.
The Norfolk grant, of all of the ones that we've applied for and been given, I'll include. So we had Hampton Roads Workforce Development did a reimbursement of some sanitization supplies. Isle of Wight County did, I think theirs was like a reimbursement of some expenses as well. But Norfolk's was by far the easiest to, I think, apply for. And like I asked them a couple of different ways just to make sure there's no reporting requirements on the back end.
Which is ridiculous that these people are asking for reporting. Sorry, not to jump in, but like, is someone really going to line on him each of those things? Boom, boom. And if they are, seriously, like, if we're going through what you say is the most, dire of needs ever, and you're going to pay someone some amount of money to go through and check each one of those things times 150,000 businesses per city, that seems like a bad use of time in this.
And that's exactly what we had to do for the Hampton Roads Workforce Council one. We had to go through our invoices and add all these up. So we paid our general manager, who's the highest paid employee in the company, to itemize our invoices so that we could tally up to achieve the $2,000 reimbursement that they were offering us. Now, I say that while being absolutely blessed to have been given the opportunity to get that grant. I don't want to diminish their efforts and what they did for us with that grant, but it could have been less laborious. And the Norfolk one has been the least laborious. The Rebuild Virginia one, which we were awarded, I think that application took like 3 or 4 hours. And this is from somebody who has the most organized Google Drive you can imagine. And I know where all our tax documents are. And, I can access our payroll records with ease. And it still took me like 3-4 hours to complete that Rebuild VA application.
And that's the second time around, not the first time, because the first time I hear it was even worse.
Yeah, so I applied when the threshold was still $10,000 was the maximum you can be given. So I think I applied probably in the first round. Maybe, I don't know. They all kind of blend together. Like we've applied, that's been kind of one of my main jobs since the pandemic started is identify. And Tim, by the way, thank you for keeping that list of grant opportunities going on StartWheel, because I'm pretty sure that I found a couple of them through that list.
Awesome.
And I'm not just blowing smoke. That's been really actually helpful, and I appreciate
StartWheel.org, your award-winning Bob.
One of my big jobs this summer and into the fall has been identifying and applying for these grants, and we've been rather successful at that. And that is, our number one seller this year in terms of revenue has been our biggest customer so far. I hope it doesn't stay that way. Like I would like to get back to where our customers are sustaining the business. And we're not, constantly, I don't know how to frame it, on the government's teat. So that's as a business owner, it doesn't make me feel good that we've gotten all these grants. They're handouts, an expression of the hard work that we've put into this business over 10 years, and that our employees, the service that they give to our customers every day. These grant monies are not reflective of that. They're reflective of my ability to fill out an application and the pain that we've felt financially as a business. I want to get past that. I really do.
So with that, vaccine comes out totally more effective and successful than we ever thought that it could possibly be.
Yep.
Got the green light to go full-on operations. What's your biggest challenge once you get the green light, and how long is it going to take you to get to operating to full capacity?
Well, the biggest challenge will be wiping the smile off my face. I have varying thoughts about this, and I listen to about any economics, podcast you can get your hands on, and so I kind of keep abreast of all the different thought. Ways to think about what the future of post-pandemic looks like. And I'm somewhere in the ether of it could go either way. This could take a very long time for individuals in society to forget about the mask wearing thing, to forget about not going out. I mean, Zack, before we went live, you were talking about how you simply don't go out, don't go to restaurants and stuff. Like, how long is that psychology going to last for?
A long time, in my opinion. I mean, I think it's a bell curve. You're going to have people that will jump on immediately, but then you're going to have people. I'm in tier 2 and 3 of a 4-part bell curve, but I don't feel comfortable immediately getting back into that, and I think that's going to take forever. And so my guess is to answer that and then get back to you is if we're in 8 months of doing this, it's going to take at least 8 months to get people to start feeling comfortable to come back. I think you just double what that is. So if you're at 12 months, it's going to be another 12 months before people feel fully comfortable to get back into that thing where you'll get the people at the beginning. We're going to jump on board immediately, but then 2 and 3, it's going to take, basically double that time frame. And then that quadrant 4 people, I mean, that's just, you may never get them back.
Yeah. So there's one way to think about it. Also, all of the CARES Act funding and all these grants and stuff, again, we've been successful in covering our losses for the year with those. And we are approaching operational profitability again. So we're break even. It depends on the month or window of time you look at since the pandemic started. But lately, we're feeling pretty comfortable with our bottom line being in the black. Yet we still have some of this grant money. And I think there's probably a lot of other businesses and restaurants in particular who are in that position, who are looking to apply these funds towards some growth initiatives to the extent we can do that legally. And so I have a feeling that the competition is going to heat up real fast and real big in the restaurant industry, because we have some capital that may have never been there before. Like, and we can do stuff with that. Like, we don't have to decide between, adding another shift or replacing a refrigerator, or hell, even calling the repairman out there. A lot of restaurants were making those decisions because margins in this industry are not that great anyway. So now that there's all this capital and we're ready to do stuff again, to grow again, not only did the pandemic shrink our businesses, but it, of course, curbed our ability to pursue any growth opportunities, new locations, new lines of business, exploring with the menu, et cetera, et cetera. We haven't been able to do that now for going on 10 months. So it's not, if you add to the function of how far down sales went, the notion that we weren't able to grow during that period when we otherwise would have, the loss is compounded by that difference for the restaurant businesses. But again, now that we have some access to capital through the CARES Act and stuff, I think a lot of restaurants are going to move very quickly to open up a new location or, do some other experimental stuff that would make the competition heat up between us.
Well, I think that's what people are hoping for. Chris, what's something that we haven't talked about today that you want to talk about?
Your Ironman competition?
It got canceled.
It got canceled?
Well, postponed twice.
Oh, no.
I did my own DIY.
Yeah, well, so mental health is, I don't know how that has affected yours, but there's been this year has been a roller coaster. And it has definitely forced me to adjust my expectations about things in general, and to maybe avoid getting overexcited about a thing or an event before it happens, because I would say 90% of the things that I looked forward to this year were canceled in some way, shape, or form. We were supposed to jump on a plane on Friday, March 11th, to Ireland for St. Patty's Day.
Oh.
And that's the exact day, T-minus 12 hours of us getting on that plane is when they shut down all the borders. And we were planning that trip since last June.
What's interesting with that? Now, granted, that's a vacation, and that's something that's 100% what you're saying, and I think something like that is probably a little bit more difficult to establish and to do compared to what I'm about to say. But from like an event perspective, I think you just have to look at every day that you're doing it as that event, right? And so don't look at the June 11th date that was supposed to be my Ironman, then the September 19th that was supposed to be my Ironman, or the marathon date that Boston has canceled. Things like that. I think you just have to look at each and every day as that event, right? So I'm supposed to go swim. Not supposed to. I'm going to swim after this at some point. That's an event, and that's a big event, and I have to look at them that way. And so if you don't look at these things as big events and you just look at them as all events, I think it helps in that. It also helps you not get so nervous on race day. Because I get nervous as hell on race day, even though I know I'm going to get last place always.
So you're saying to imagine that you're swimming laps in the pool by yourself is the big race?
No, I think you try to treat the big race as treat the big race as just another workout.
Okay, I got it.
Every day, going to work every day. It's not about, the New Year's night being the best night where I'm going to get tips every night, right? In that world, it's every night I'm going to get great tips. And it just so happens that on New Year's, I might get more. And so not looking forward to those things, it's hard to do, but looking at every session, every workout, every like micro piece as just another one as big ones.
So in other words, celebrate every moment of your life as if there is no tomorrow.
And you got to.
Yeah, you know,
I mean,
silver lining in all of this.
Isn't that the thing that
And when things open back up and we can go to a concert again,
shouldn't you enjoy that?
Or, huh?
Shouldn't you enjoy that when you're there? Right, like it's a great moment, and so
it's going to be like so. You know, as a final perspective on when things maybe get back to normal, is the excitement and fervor for which people are going to attend in the moment, going to the concert or Busch Gardens or, you know, any of these things without a mask, how just revitalizing that is going to be. And
well, I mean, I think that's, you know, hopefully over the last 8 months, that's how people have really treated their lives, is to really invest more in the things that matter instead of the things that don't. You know, some people invest a lot of money in Starbucks, and to them, that's what matters. I would question that, right? Maybe not Starbucks.
I would too, as a coffee shop owner.
Say what?
I said I would question that too from the perspective of a coffee shop owner.
But your moment shouldn't be the coffee. It should be the experience at the coffee shop, right? Or the people that you're with. And so really enjoy those moments. And I hope more people can really invest more into those moments instead of just the thing, if you will. So, Chris, it's been a blast. Tim, any last words?
Thanks, guys. This has been refreshing to talk business with you guys. It's been a while. We should do this more often.
You got it, Bob Villa.
All right. Well, thanks for having me, guys. It's been a rich event here.
It's been a rich experience. Hopefully, it's not being a little facetious by that, but it's been a blast. And next time, we'll see you guys soon. Peace and avocado toast. Later.
Avocado toast. Get yours. Cure Coffee.